friends. This is the introduction to the series that I want to make about Liberty fabrics. I've been talking about it for ages, haven't I? Right, well, I've finally sorted out in my head how I'd like to do it. I'm going to do this little introduction now and tell you a little bit about Liberty fabric and how I got involved with working with it. And then the series is going to include some of the things that I make over these next few weeks. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll post them once a week, a bit of a Liberty thing, and it'll have that Liberty introduction, so you'll know it's not an ordinary video about the stuff that's going on here. So Liberty fabric then. In the description below, I'm going to leave you some links, quite a few links to... one of them is a video that is made about the production of the fabric, and then some other little links to stuff about Liberty. Liberty fabric then, what is it? I'm not going to give you a massive history because I've just done a little search online there, and there's so much information there if you wanted to do your own search. But to say very simply, Liberty is a shop in London, and it was established in the late 1800s by a bloke called Arthur Lazenby Liberty. That was his name. So he was Mr. Liberty. So it's not called it for any other reason. Maybe if he'd been called, Mr. Smith, it would have been Smith's. I don't know. But anyway, he was quite a guy by all accounts, and he liked to travel a lot. And he travelled to the east, where he saw all these fabulous designs and textiles and carpets and rugs and so on. And he brought these things back to his little shop on Regent Street in Liberty in Regent Street in London. And he started stocking these things that he found on his travels. And at the same time, it was the arts and crafts movements in the UK, and William Morris was a designer who was painting and designing the most beautiful things, which were turned into wallpapers and fabrics. And he and William Morris had a bit of a collaboration. So there's a little bit of setting him in history. But this fabric that is called Liberty Tana Lawn, what's that? Tana Lawn, Lake Tana, in Ethiopia, is where the cotton was grown, and the cotton was it had a very long staple, which means the length of the fibres was long, which means that it could be spun more finely, and when it was woven, the cloth was very fine. It had a very high thread count, and so the cloth was almost like silk, but with the properties of cotton. And I suppose that's one of its main properties is that it's got this fantastic handle. It's a beautiful, beautiful fabric. So I've always known Liberty's been around, but what on earth got me into it? Well, it was quite by accident. I've always messed about with fabric all my life, and my mum met many years ago a woman called Kathleen, who got her interested in quilt making. But what it was about Kathleen was she was quite a remarkable person. She had owned and run a fabric shop, like a sewing shop, in the south of Lancashire for many years. And also she was a bit of a hoarder. I think anybody who's involved with fabric and textiles and wool and yarn, any of those things, we're all hoarders, aren't we? But because she had a shop, she had a huge amount of hoarding going on. And she closed the shop when she retired. Her husband had died. She was on her own. And she moved to near where my parents used to live. When she was downsizing, she gave quite a lot of things to my mum. My mum would use them, if they were suitable for what she was doing. And if my mum didn't want them, she would give them to me. And she would say to me, "Oh, Kathleen's she's left some things for you in the conservatory." And there were always really interesting bits and pieces that she was trying to pass on to people that she knew would be interested in them. Well, there was a suitcase, and I didn't even open it. Mum said, "There, Kathleen's left you this." Okay, so I just put it in the boot of the car and drove it home with some other bits and pieces, and I didn't really look at it for a day or two. I thought, oh yeah, I wonder what's in that suitcase. So I opened the suitcase. Well, inside the suitcase was this lady's complete stash of Liberty fabric. Now, I knew about Liberty, but I'd never really handled it. I'd never really seen it, and I never really understood it until I opened up this suitcase and found inside this fabric that was like nothing I'd ever handled before. Then I started researching it, and I started looking into the designs and how it had been designed and the history of it, and I was hooked, completely hooked. Now, this was 2013, and I'd just come back from New Zealand. Yes, 2013. I'd just come back from New Zealand, and I had been invited to take part in an exhibition with two friends of mine who are also artists or textile artists, you know, clever people. And the three of us were going to do this exhibition all about art in the home. It was called Home is Where the Art Is. And it was beautiful. I'll put some pictures in here. There were some beautiful textiles that my friend Rachel had made, some beautiful paintings that my friend Jane had done. And my challenge was I was going to make some quilts, quilts being a very homely thing. So I was going to make some new quilts. When I got back from New Zealand, and I just kind of hit the ground running, and I made 7 new quilts. I never stopped. I just completely head down 7 new quilts, one after the other. Long 10-hour days where I would just be stitching and designing and working away at these quilts. And all the time I kept thinking, do you know, one of these days I'll use that Liberty fabric. And I thought, well, if I don't use it now for this exhibition, when will I use it? So I tipped it all out onto the table. There was a few other bags as well that had arrived since then. So there's quite a lot. This table was pretty covered in Liberty fabric. And I began to look at the designs and look at how they work together. Because that's the clever thing about Liberty. Some of these designs are 80 years old. And they're very, very recognisable. So this is a design called Hera, which is the peacock feathers. I think this is probably the most recognisable fabric of a Liberty fabric, this Hera. And the clever thing about how the designs work is that this is Hera in the traditional blue, but here it is in a rather lurid pink, and here in a green. It's the same fabric design, but they would make this fabric in lots of different colourways. This is a fabric called Strawberry Thief here, and I have 2, I think I have more, but there's 2 I've picked out this morning, Strawberry Thief designs, and you can see how one's got a blue background and one's got a less obviously blue background. This is a print called Betsy, this is Betsy. Now, you may even recognise these prints. The designers that they used worked together. So they would design something, but they would have reference to the other designers as well, and also include these other colours that would blend well together. So you pick up this one and this one, and they actually work really well together, not just because of the fact it's this fantastic fabric, but because they chose a colour palette that was similar, and they designed with reference to each other. Now, there's a lot more modern designs these days which are on Tana lawn, but not quite to my taste. I like the really, really old designs. So I tipped all this fabric out and I thought, yeah, I'm going to make a quilt using this Liberty. And what I love about the way that the designs are is the gradation of colour. So the quilt that I'm going to put in here to show you now is the one that I made. I'll see if I didn't take any video of it, but I'll see if I can put a few pictures in here while I'm talking. What I wanted to achieve was the idea of a colour wash idea, where we would start with a very, very dark colour, work our way all the way into the middle where it was almost disappearingly light, and then back out again the other side to a very dark colour. My daughter-in-law Anna, she says it looks like it has a bright light shining in the middle of it, which and it does. I think that's a very good description. So I made that quilt, and it was the showpiece of the exhibition. The other quilts were great. I really liked them, but I really liked that one best of all. And I sold it. And I also got a commission to make another one. So that was very good. And it started me on the track of thinking really much more carefully about fabric choices, and rather than just shoving any old cotton prints together, it got me really thinking very carefully about how to use design in the prints as well as design in the quilt. But I want to show you this fabric now that I've been showing you here, because this one's my favourite. I'll show you in the most traditional colourway, which is probably this one. This is a design called Wiltshire Berry. I'll get really close in so you can see it's lots and lots of berries and foliage. So that's Wiltshire Berry. But very cleverly, Wiltshire Berry comes in so many different colourways. There's one that's a bit more purpley, then that lovely pale green one, another red one, but quite a different red. These are all Wiltshire Berry, but then here there's a fantastic blue one, and then this green, which I absolutely adore. Okay then, so Liberty. What are we going to do now that I've fallen in love with Liberty? What was I going to do about that? Well, nothing really. After Kathleen's Fabrics, I thought, well, I better buy some of this stuff. It's £25 a metre if you buy it from Liberty's in London. £25 a metre, which is incredibly expensive. Far, far too expensive to cut up and make into quilts. However, the stuff is printed in Lancaster, and I pass by Lancaster every time I go and see my dad. So I used to call in to the factory and go to the factory shop and buy up little bits of Liberty. They got very cautious about it when they realised that people were buying it and selling it on eBay, which I think is a terrible thing to do. So you could only buy, I think, 2 metres of any one fabric. You couldn't buy any more than that. And I think they had a limit as well on what you could buy. And I think that's fine. You know, they were selling it at factory prices. There were often mistakes in it, faults in it. But if you were making quilts with it, you could cut round the mistakes. So when I was down visiting Kath at the Long Arm Quilters, I thought, well, and I was going to go down to see my dad. I was passing right by Liberty, the Liberty factory, or the factory that prints many, many, many fabrics, as well as Liberty being one of them. I thought, I'll go and have a look, see if there's any beautiful fabric that I can pick up. And when I got there, I had a horrible shock, because the whole production of Liberty has now been moved out of the country and now happens in Italy. So the new factory is in Italy. There is no Liberty printed in the UK anymore, and there's no Liberty to be had at the factory prices, at the seconds with the printing mistakes. And so the Liberty that I have now is all I have. I won't have any more, and that's fine. I was upset about it for a few minutes, and I thought, hang on a minute, it's fine. I've got lots. I've got all the Liberty I want to make the things that I want to make. I'm just not going to have to mind. I could have got really cross about that, couldn't I? Moving it out to Italy like that. But maybe I need to have a holiday in Italy. I should find out whereabouts in Italy the Liberty factories moved to. So there is no option for me now to buy Liberty at a price that I can afford. I definitely would never buy the fabric at £25 a metre. There are other places you can buy it in the UK, and there are Liberty clubs as well. I've been researching this, where you can sign up for a fat quarter club, and once a month you get sent 5 or 6 fat quarters of Liberty. And guess they do that with all sorts of fabrics. But I've got all the Liberty I need for now to do all the things that I want to do. And so that's a sort of a mishmashy kind of history about how I got involved with Liberty. But what I'm going to do in the next few series here, I'm going to talk about what I've made with some of the Liberty fabrics. I'm going to talk about some of the English paper piecing that I've done. In fact, I'll show you this one because it's right here. Okay, so if I just move this Wiltshire berry out of the way. So this then is a colour wash quilt that I made. And I made this one. On the back, it's got two different colours of Liberty that are all quilted in the same size grid as the front. And this is all squares of 2-inch squares of Liberty, all pieced together, English paper piecing style, like we did the dog. Now, I've been making this over on the Patreon page for that tier of people who signed up to Patreon. Thank you. And the idea with this one is that this is going to be entered into a prize draw for patrons. And because I liked it a lot, I'm actually making another one. And this one's for me. So this one is going to be raffled or auctioned, or what's it going to be? Prize drawn. This one's going to be prize drawn for the patrons. And this one is going to be for me. Because, again, I designed this in that same colour wash way. There are no repeats here. So there are 49, are there 7x7? 49 squares here with no repeats. And that's the wonderful thing about Liberty. With the quilts that the colour wash quilt that I've shown you, do you know, I think there are very, very few repeats, if any. That's how many fabrics there are to go at. Okay then, so that's enough for this time. In the future videos that I'm going to make, I'm going to show you some of the things that I've made using Liberty and how I made them. Don't fall in love with Liberty like I did. It's very, very, very expensive hobby to have, but it really is the most beautiful fabric you will ever work with. It's an absolute joy. Okay guys, I'll see you next time in the Liberty series, and then soon we'll be getting into some gardening because the garden's definitely waking up out there and the soil's warming up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time we do some Liberty stuff. Bye for now. I'm just going to tag this bit on the end while you look at this lovely pink Liberty fabric. I discovered what the problem was with the sound, and I'm going to reload this video, but I'll keep the old one up because there's quite a lot of lovely comments on there. Thank you very much. And so if you are a purist like me, then you can listen to this now with the proper sound. I'm sorry about the over-modulated sound before. I know exactly what I did, and I will never do that again. I'll see you guys next time with really good sound. Okay.